Namaste and greetings. I'm Mahima Kapoor, researcher and assistant editor at IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, Prabhav एवं नीति अनुसंधान संस्थान नई दिल्ली. Welcome you all to the IMPRI #Web Policy Talk. Since the opening up of the economy through liberalization and globalization after the 1991 crisis, the composition, volume, and value of India's foreign trade has undergone substantial changes. To understand these structural changes and its implications for the Indian economy, we have gathered for a talk under the series, The State of Foreign Trade, #Talking Trade, with Professor Aradhana Agarwal on growth, diversification, and upgrading of India's exports in post-reforms period, some policy implications. This deliberation is being organized by the IMPRI Center for the Study of Finance and Economics. I feel honored to introduce the chair, Professor Mukul Asher, former professor, Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy, National University of Singapore. Welcome, sir. I feel privileged to introduce the speaker, Professor Aradhana Agarwal. Ma'am is a professor in Indian Business Studies at Copenhagen Business School, Denmark. A PhD from Delhi School of Economics, she has a long experience in university teaching and research, including the University of Delhi and some of the premier policy think tanks in India, including IEG, NCARI, ICRIER, and IRS. She is also an international consultant and has worked with prestigious international agencies like ADB, UNDP, World Bank, UNESCAPE, UNIDO, and UNCLAD. She has served as visiting fellow at the IMF and Korean Institute of Economic Policy and visiting professor at Kobe University, Japan, and has published in leading international and national journals, newspapers, and books, in addition to her monographs on anti-dumping and special economic zones. She has presented her research in several countries across the world. Welcome, ma'am. We are fortunate to have Professor Shahid Ahmed as the discussant for the session. Sir is a professor, Department of Economics, Jamia Millia Islamia, New Delhi. Welcome, sir. We have with us Dr. Nalin Bharti as the moderator. Sir is an associate professor, Humanities and Social Sciences, Indian Institute of Technology, Patna. Welcome, sir. Now I invite Dr. Bharti to take the proceedings further, and we look forward to learning from our esteemed gathering. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. First of all, I would like to welcome Professor Aradhana Agarwal for joining this web talk. This is very important moment for all of us when the Trade Minister of UK is coming India for discussing FTA, Foreign Trade Agreement. India has signed many foreign trade free trade agreement. For the foreign trade agreement, it's free trade agreement, and India has signed comprehensive economic partnership agreement, also SEPA, with many countries. So some of our research scholar has done the study on SEPA and also on FTA, and some of the results are encouraging for us because FTA and the bilateral trade between India and Japan and bilateral trade in other FTA shows that there is improvement in information technology trade, and also there are improvement in terms of services. While in case of manufacturing, India has to travel a lot. Since Professor Mukul Asher has also joined just now, so I would also like to invite Professor Asher to give a overview and his own inaugural remark for this web talk. Professor Asher.
Thank you. My apologies for being late. Some technical issues with my computer. Let me start by thanking IMRI Director Arjun Kumar, Professor Nalin, for inviting me to this webinar by Professor Aradhna Agrawal. This is a very timely topic. And I am always amazed at how IMPRI keeps on coming time after time with very relevant and high quality seminars at frequent intervals. I'm going to make my remarks in terms of 4 points. First, when we analyze exports or more broadly international trade, in assessing a contribution of a country globally in terms of exports and trade, the absolute size is also relevant, something that is often ignored in terms of looking at exports to GDP ratio or some subset and saying whether you are part of that or not. Let me give you some figures. 2021 export of both merchandise and services by countries. These are obviously estimated figures, so a lot of the actual data is there as well. The rest of it is estimated. India's 2021 merchandise exports are projected to be 400 billion US dollars. Services exports are projected to be 232.1. So the total trade, total exports alone are 632.1. Now let me put that in comparison. India's figures are 2.6 times that of Indonesia in terms of total exports, 1.8 times that of Vietnam, and 1.3 times that of Taiwan. All these 3 countries the perception is that they are somehow much more internationally open, integrated than India is. But that is not really the case once you look at the absolute size. The next, in terms of my sample, South Korea had 738 billion. So India is within striking distance, if it grows faster, of South Korea, though Germany, USA, China are way above India, and it will take considerable time to narrow the gap between them and India. The total trade, this is just exports. We were to take imports, which will be, this is 632, imports will be about 680 together. So we are talking about 1,300 billion. And India is going to approach 2 trillion in few years. 2 trillion is very significant in global contribution to employment, to international trade, and so on. So this whole perception that India is not open is something that needs to be rethought. Second, India is the 9th largest exporter of agricultural commodities. Its ongoing initiatives, for example, mega food parks and others, are likely to to help in improving this land further and in significantly contributing to food security of many countries as a reliable and trustworthy partner. It's an important part of global integration that India is doing in terms of food security. Third, India has shifted its economic agreements, as I caught the last part of Professor Bharti. That's what it was. The gist of it was that its economic agreements strategies towards those who can provide more balanced treatment of goods, services, investments, and flow of professional and technical personnel. Also, those countries which have got critical energy and other resources that India needs. So India is about to conclude an economic agreement with UAE. It has close relations with Saudi Arabia. Indeed, India was the largest exporter of agricultural product to Saudi Arabia in the second half of 2021, replacing Brazil. It is also negotiating with UK, Russia, Australia, Brazil, Japan, and so on. Fourth, national security and economic diplomacy, which were never sort of thought of together, are now being thought of together. And one example is Quad, India, Japan, Australia, and the United States, and the different arrangements that Quad is making. So India is now looking for the first time since independence to an external sector as a critical engine of growth, which India never did before. And that augurs quite well along with all the other initiatives. So India's external sector now has to be looked at in a very different light than what has traditionally been the case. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Professor Asad, for these very, very in-depth comparative data about India with other countries in Asia. And now I think we should invite Professor Aradhana Agrawal for her lecture. And after that, we'll also invite Professor Saeed Ahmad for his point. Now I invite Professor Agrawal for her lecture, and then we'll take up some of the questions also. Thank you, madam.
Hello, good morning, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank IMPRI Director Professor Arjun Kumar for inviting me to this talk. It's really a pleasure to present my findings with this gathering. And I hope that I will myself learn a lot. And I must thank Professor Mukul Escher for very interesting points. In fact, one of these points at least I will be taking up in my presentation. This paper actually has a very focused view of exports, where I am basically focusing on the kind of export push, the kind of export focus that India should adopt at this time. I'm not much talking about the free trade agreements, because I think that for free trade agreements to succeed, the countries must have competitiveness of its exports, because these FTAs are not always a sort of a positive gain for everyone. There are losers as well. So one must understand these things before, because there is a lot of push on RCEP and many other FTAs, but I think that it is very important to have one's own competitiveness to really succeed in these agreements. So my focus is on what should be the focus of India's exports, and I have a sort of I start with the motivation of this study. Yeah, how did I get the motivation for this study? In fact, when I was in Denmark 2 years ago, before COVID, actually, I found that there was a new debate that started in India, and there was a lot of push to focus on labor-intensive, low-skilled exports and manufacturing. There were some in the power corridors of India, many people were actually pushing, they were saying that India should actually try to focus on these exports, because India has comparative advantage in abundant labor, and because India's shares are not growing in those sectors where there is comparative advantage, India is losing. It is export dampening and it is growth dampening. And I also found that there was a comparison with Bangladesh. It was shown that how Bangladesh has been progressing or growing much faster, which is a fact, than India in current years. And the reason that was given was that Bangladesh has focused on the sector where it has comparative advantage, whereas India has not. So these were the kinds of triggers in my mind which led to this study that I conducted. Theoretically, it is found that in an open economy, exports actually grow in those sectors where the country has comparative advantage. So which means that post-reform period, comparative advantages should align with the export shares. This is what actually this is what the theory is about, the mainstream theory. But then it is found in India that export shares are growing in those sectors where the country doesn't have comparative advantage. So I am just trying to look at this paradox and try to see how India's exports have grown in the post-1990 period. So this is what actually I'm trying to do, and try to draw some policy conclusions, how India can actually, at this moment, how India can really move forward. So this is the kind of objective that I am that I have this in this paper. But of course, I will put some reflections on RCEP, because I have written about RCEP and FTAs, and I have certain views on them as well. So now this paper actually, this study actually has addressed 5 questions, and these are: how has India's growth performance been through this liberal economic regime of the post-1991 period? How has the distribution of exports changed? Have they diversified, or they are specialized over time? How has the composition of exports have changed over the years? Are we really moving in the sectors faster where we have revealed comparative advantage, or we are moving away from such sectors, as has been said? What is the way forward for India? Why we have this kind of pattern that we have at the moment? So these are some of the questions that I will be answering in this presentation. So let me start with the growth kind of aspect of exports. But before that, I would like to talk about the theory. I am an academician, so I would like to look at the theory, and I will try to show how the kind of theories, different theories are relevant to explain India's exports in this current scenario. So if we look at these theories, these are neoclassical theory. Neoclassical theory says that exports are determined by factor endowment. If you are labor abundant, then you should focus on, you export, you have comparative advantages in labor intensive products. If you are capital abundant, then your comparative advantages are in capital goods or skill intensive commodities, depending upon what you have. But then there are endogenous growth theories that focus on knowledge, skill upgrading, and this happens in an open economy due to FDI and trade, because they are accompanied with technology transfer. There are spillovers that led to increasing knowledge and increasing skills within the economy, leading to diversification of exports and upgrading of exports. Then there is a GVC literature which focuses again on the insertion into global value chains. And I think, and this is what I've been writing, that global value chains is a single most important factor driving growth and exports and FDI in this contemporary world. And then we have Mallett's theory. Mallett's theory is not really looking at the overall growth, macro level factors. They are looking at micro level factors, that is firm level heterogeneities. So some firms, they acquire knowledge, capabilities, and they enjoy higher productivity. And these are the firms that drive exports. So these are the theories which are actually currently there explaining exports. And I would like to see India's exports within the framework of these theories. So all these theories suggest that exports grow in an open economy. So the effect of openness is always positive on export growth rate. So different reasons are given. I'm not getting into those reasons at the moment because I have many other, what is my time? How much time do I have? Hello?
Yeah.
15-20 minutes, no problem.
20 minutes. Okay, maybe half an hour.
Okay. Please go ahead, no problem.
Okay, so yeah, but all these theories suggest that if there is openness, there is increase in exports for different reasons. Neoclassical theory suggests that there is specialization. You specialize in those products where you have comparative advantage. Whereas other theories are not so positive about specialization. They say that there is a possibility of diversification. So whether it is endogenous growth theory, because it says that foreign direct investment comes and that leads to and trade, both of them improves the economic, the knowledge stock in the economy, and that leads to diversification of exports. GVC so is the same thing. Mallett's theory also says that if there is openness, then the productivity constraints come down, as a result of which more and more firms are able to export in the world market, and therefore there is a possibility of diversification. So far as upgrading is concerned, the approach of neoclassical, which is a mainstream theory, which is actually driving our thoughts towards export, that actually is very static in nature, and it says that it all depends upon where you have comparative advantage. If you have continuing comparative advantage in labor, then you continue to produce labor intensive products. But other theories are more dynamic, and they say that there is a possibility of upgrading due to knowledge. And Mallett's theory says that as you open up, then more and more firms, they get exposed to GVCs, they get exposed to trade, and therefore they upgrade their productivity, and therefore there is a possibility of upgrading. So neoclassical theory, which is the mainstream theory, that is very static in nature. It says that there is specialization, but because resources are transferred to specialized sector, there is growth in exports. Whereas other theories are talking about diversification of exports, and they also say that there is a possibility of exports. So within this framework, I would like to see how India's exports have moved further. Now, this is a time series that I have taken from WTO database, and this is a volume of exports. This is not in terms of value, but in terms of volume. And it shows that until 1990, now if you look at this carefully, if 1990, world exports were on an average greater than India's exports. The growth, this is the growth rate, annual percentage change in the growth. Now 90 to 2000, India started growing more rapidly. 2000 to 2010, there was acceleration in the growth rate. If you see, the distance has increased between 2000 and 2010. But after 2010, we again started slipping. And we find that that India's growth rate are actually becoming lower than, or they are entangled with the world export growth rate. So there is a deceleration there that we see there. So this is the kind of thing which, what does that mean? That is what I would like to explain, that despite acceleration, despite a growth spurt in exports, we could not really sustain this acceleration. That's what actually I wanted to say. And we could not really establish ourselves as an exporting economy. Now here I would like to bring the point that Professor Escher just made about the first point that he made about the volume. And I find that, yes, he is absolutely right, that we are 14th in terms of our share in global exports, that is in terms of the value, that is what he was talking about. There are only few countries, developing countries, which are above India. Most of them are essentially developed countries. Okay, so here we have, I actually try to find out which are the countries which have more exports than India. And these are China, and these are developing countries I'm talking about. So China, Mexico, Singapore, Hong Kong, Korea, and Russian Federation. So these are the countries which have more exports than India. But if you look at the time pattern that you find, the last curve in the beginning, the green one is India, is where India lies. And there is very marginal increase in India's exports over the years. Whereas if you look at China, China started almost where India was. I mean, the gap was very, very small. But over the years, China actually gained substantial lead, and more than 13% of world share is accounted for by China alone. So if you just look at India and China, the gap actually has grown like anything, even if there is effect on all other countries who are exporting more than India. Now I come to the point which Professor Escher said is not very relevant, and it is about the share of India's exports to GDP. If we look at that share, because India is a large economy, and Korea and all those economies, Taiwan, they are very small economies. So it is of course, here I beg to differ that it is important to see how much is the ratio of exports to GDP. And here we find that India is really in the bottom 2 deciles. There was an acceleration between 2000 and 2011. And if you look at India's ranking improved to 132 out of 195, but then we again slipped, and again we came into the bottom 2 deciles. In 2000, between 2000 and 2011, we were one of the most fastest growing export economy. In fact, we were only behind China, a major economy, which is the other countries were very small. So that was the kind of growth, but then we slipped, and many other countries started growing faster after 2010. So we lost our ranking. Here we find that that even, sorry. So even if we were growing, even if we had a growth spurt and we were growing faster, we could not really maintain that. And this is very important to sustain the export growth rate over the years to really increase our share. Now, when we come to the specialization of this, I focus on 3 parameters here, 3 indicators: the distribution of export shares, the variety of exports, and distribution of RCAs. So let us see how we performed in terms of diversification. Now, when I look at this distribution, I use this curve, Lorentz curve, which many of us are familiar with. And this curve shows that India actually, and this curve actually is based on the 6-digit level exports. So 6-digit level classification of exports. And here we find that top 10% product lines, they were accounting for nearly 90% of trade exports in 1990. Over the years, there was increase in the share of other products as well. But this increase actually, there is a change in the Lorentz curve here you find, but this change only happened in the middle range. That is the products which were earlier marginal, they were very close to those 10 groups, those 10% of commodities. Only there was a shift in the shares, and there was some equality at that level. But again, the large number of products, they still contributed very small to the overall exports. The share of the top products, top 10% products, that declined from 90% to 83%. So there was this difference, and this happened only in the middle of the section. The rest of the commodities were not affected. Gini coefficient also declined, but this decline was marginal. So what we find that India's exports are still concentrated at the top. There was change, but this change was not towards specialization. This was diversification. And this diversification happened even if it is marginally, it is very small. But this is something because many countries tended to specialize in their export basket. Now, what is very important to note here is that India is still diversified, even if the rate of diversification is not very high. Now, let me just focus on this diversification aspect further by looking at how it happened or why it didn't happen, what exactly was the mechanism. And so I try to decompose our export growth rate. And decompose means we look at the contribution of the existing products to export growth and the contribution of new products and the old products that exited from the export basket. So A is the contribution by existing products, B minus C is the contribution of the dynamics, export dynamics, that is the net entry of products. And here we find that look at the first column here, the second column here, which shows that most of this growth in exports came from the within products, that is the existing products. So existing products, the growth in exports of existing products only contributed to the growth of exports. In the beginning, we had a large share of these export dynamics as well, but over the years we find that they are not really sustained and they remain very, very small. Now here it is also important to see that the number of products continued to increase here, the number of new products until 2005. It was only after that for 2 years, the number of new products declined and then again they increased. So even if there was an increase in the number of products which were included on an export basket, the export share of these products did not really increase much. This is important to understand. Most of the growth came from those products which were already there in the export basket. So most of this export is driven by intensive margin. And why this is so, this is also important to understand. By 1988, India's export portfolio already comprised of 3,771 products out of 5,000 products in this classification, which is 73.4%. Now, this could be attributed to the promotion of manufacturing capabilities during the protected regime. Now, when we opened the economy, then there was a fear that now India's exports will become non-competitive because that competitiveness was driven by the protective regime, but this didn't happen. As we opened up, the number of products started expanding in India's basket. In 2019, India's export basket covered 4,441 products. But what is important that despite this increase, their contribution remained small. This is something that we need to explain and see how it happened and what we can do to really change this kind of scenario. Now let's come to the revealed comparative advantage. Now in economics, this is what we use for our to measure how much is the comparative advantage in different categories. So here what we find is we looked at the number of products with RCA greater than or 1, and then we also look at the exports under RCA. Now, if we look at the products under RCA, we find that there is a continuous increase of products under RCA greater than or equal to 1. That is where we have revealed comparative advantage. But if we look at if you look at the percentage of exports under RCA products, that has declined. And this is what perhaps is taken seriously, and it is shown that how India is not really exporting the products where India has comparative advantage. So I think this is where we find that there is a sort of inconsistency in export shares and revealed comparative advantage. Let me explain that in my presentation today. We looked at the distribution of exports by the value of RCA indices. And here we find that there were a number of products which had RCA greater than or equal to even 10 in 1990. This percentage started declining over the years. Average RCA value also started declining. So first two categories, if you look at where we had very high RCAs, there we find there is a decline in the share of products under this as well as the RCA. So revealed comparative advantage, where we had very high revealed comparative advantage, there these revealed comparative advantages started declining. Mode RCA also declined sharply over the years. On the other hand, in other categories, most of these products shifted to this category of 3 to 6.5 or 1 to 3. So this is where most of these products, so there was decline, and they remained, of course, they remained the products with RCA greater than or equal to 1, but their RCA values had declined. So this is where we find that RCA, the share of exports under RCA, that has declined. This is because of the decline in the RCA values itself. Even though they remained above RCA, the number of products above increased, that the distribution of RCA values itself changed. And this is what I'm showing here now. It is this which shows that how the distribution of RCAs itself has changed over the years. It has become more equal. The mode value of RCA, this threshold level of RCA has moved towards the left. So more and more products, they came into RCA category, but overall RCA values had come down for those products where we had very high RCA values. Look at this last one. Here we had very sharp rise, for 10% products, but now it has become more equal. So that is where we find that the export, so it is not the structural change in export per se, it is the change in the distribution of revealed comparative advantages itself, which led to this change in the export shares. And we need to understand how our revealed comparative advantages are changing. I think this is the point that we are not really looking at. We are just looking at the export shares. So what we did was that we began with this upgrading thing. We began with this reason, finding reasons what exactly is happening, whether we are upgrading or we are not upgrading. So what I did was I took this classification at HS6 level and then took the shares of 21 sections in that. Look at this table now. This is where we find that how the export shares and RCAs have changed. So what we find, look at the first period. And here we find that textile, natural and cultured pearls, vegetable products, mineral and chemicals and allied services, they were the top 10 products, top 5 products. They were contributing, this is the section wise. This is a section-wise classification. They were contributing 71.40% of total trade. And then next 5, they were contributing 21, and overall the contribution was 93%. Now this was the kind of thing in 98. Now look at the recent classification. And here we find how RCAs and export shares both have changed, but RCAs have changed faster. So what we find that now machinery, if you look at here, this was earlier in the next, on the 6th place. Now it has moved to the top 5 now. On the other hand, this has come down in the next 5 products, and its RCA has also come down. So if you look now, plastics, they have entered as new categories. They were not there earlier. Whereas here we find that some of the products here, like animal products, raw skins, that is where we had comparative advantage, they have gone out of this classification. So what we find that it is not merely the export share, it is also the RCA values that have changing, and RCA values have been changing a little faster. Let us look at the other classifications, which are the more known and which are typically used. So we actually looked at the classification of exports by human capital intensive products, natural resource intensive products, and unskilled labor intensive products. Now here again you find that there is a sharp decline in the share of export shares of unskilled labor intensive products. On the other hand, there is increase in the human labor intensive products. Now if you look at the next graph, this is about RCA. We find there are similar trends here, and there is a sharp decline in the RCA of unskilled labor intensive products, and there is increase in the RCA of human labor intensive products. It means that we are in transition. That is what is important to understand. Now similar graph we find here, where we find that where we have classified these products according to their technology. So high technology manufacturers, low technology, medium, and then we retain this resource base because this is where we have huge advantage due to refineries and pearls and diamonds. So if you focus on high load and medium technology, here again we find that there are changes in the export shares, but so have the the export shares have changed, but so have the RCA ratios. So both of them are changing. We are moving towards the comparative advantages in more sophisticated products. Now this is where we have this product complexity index. We have used it. This has been developed by Harvard School in their growth lab. So we use those product labs. This is the product complexity index. And this is done at 4-digit level, SITC. And here again, we find that the product share under this actually shows, this only shows those products where we have RCAs greater than or equal to 1. And on this, in the column side, we have the different levels of productivity complexity. And here we find that there has been increase in those products where we have product complexity greater than 0. So that's what we find, that there is increasing product complexity in India's exports as well. So let us see what we find here. We find that there has been export acceleration. There is no doubt about it. But then it could not be sustained, and we could not really improve our ranking in terms of exports in the world export market. Now it is very important for catch-up process that it remains sustained over a long period of time. Somehow we couldn't really do that. Then it has been accompanied by diversification in terms of both labor export shares and RCA, but still it is highly concentrated in the sense that 83% of export comes from top 10% of 6-digit products. So still we need to have more diversification, but what is important is that there was no specialization that happened. The RCA distribution has changed more prominently. This is what we found, and highly skewed RCA values of traditional products, they have come down. So they are becoming lesser competitive, and other products are becoming more competitive now. That is the meaning that is the implication of this. So what we find, what is very important is that our export structure is upgrading substantially. Now, this is something which is a very important thing to understand, and it is not only in terms of shares, but also in terms of comparative advantages. So what is the implication? India is losing real comparative advantage in labor-intensive, low-skilled products, despite the fact that we are still labor-abundant country. This is despite the fact that we are still labor-abundant country. On the other hand, RCAs are emerging in labor-intensive and technology-intensive, more complicated products. So even though factor endowment-based advantages are there, because we have seen that there is no drastic change, the portfolio has remained. The change is only in the top levels. So these products are still having those comparative advantages, those traditional products, but dynamic comparative advantages have been emerging. And how it is emerging, I try to explain this in terms of the Mallets theory. What happened was that how I look at it, how I have explained it is that during this protective regime, several firms in India, they accumulated productive capabilities. And these capabilities were acquired in those sectors which were comparative advantage defying sectors. This was because the focus was on building those high-tech, capital intensive industries within the economy. Now, what happened after economic liberalism, the constraints were unlocked, and these economies, they reaped the benefits of globalization in the sense of getting attached to GVCs or acquiring FDI or acquiring technology at lower cost, which was not there earlier possible. So they actually they reap the benefits, managed to overcome the institutional constraint and upgrading the exports. So these are and these are particularly because of GVC participation, where they acquired technological capabilities. So these micro level kind of contributions, they became very important in changing the pattern of the distribution of exports and RCAs. Point here is now why we have lost comparative advantage, revealed comparative advantage in labor intensive products despite being labor abundant. Now this is something which is where the conflict is. And here I say that one possibility is the IT revolution. We actually went for we had IT revolution, and this might have created Baumol cost disease effect. Baumol cost disease effect is when the expanding sector has, when one sector is growing rapidly, then wages also start growing. And when wages grow in this sector, they pull the wages of other sectors also in upward direction, and this affects the cost structure of the economy. So I think this is one factor that might have affected the cost structure of labor intensive sectors, and we started losing our competitiveness in these sectors. I'm not really blaming the labor factors, labor laws or any such thing, because there are certain structural factors which we must pay attention to. Then we find that most of the economies in the world, the developing economies in the world, they took advantage of contemporary globalization and they integrated themselves into global value chains. And these global value chains, they were very successful, especially in the traditional products, and they used special economic zones as the key tool. And massive fiscal deficits were given to special economic zone to get cost competitive advantages in these traditional products. India's experiment in SEZs could never bring those kinds of desirable results, outcomes. Industrial parks, textile parks, food parks, mega food parks, several types of parks we started, but they were even less successful than SEZs, and India eventually lost its comparative advantage in traditional products to new production centers. We cannot look at India in isolation. We need to see what the other countries are also doing. So these new production centers emerge in Southeast Asia, in South Asia, for instance, Bangladesh, and Middle East Asia, including Jordan and other countries, Kuwait. So these countries actually were benefited. These countries actually reaped. They grabbed exports in these traditional sector. So, but in India, what happened that this loss in competitive advantage in traditional sector could not be offset by growth in non-traditional exports, where our competitive advantages started showing up. So overall, we find that this scenario may have pulled down the growth export growth rate and may have had the impact on the scope of diversification. So this is my last slide here. And here we find that India now needs to understand that there are emerging dynamic comparative advantages in non-traditional sectors. This is something that we must understand, and we need to push them. We are familiar with the product space theory, which says that the countries with competitive strength in sophisticated and complex products face better growth prospects than those who are not. So we must understand that this is the time to upgrade the exports, because this can only build the basis for further growth, not to go back to traditional exports. So this is that I am presenting here, that even in traditional industries, the focus should be on higher value added products. India is not likely to compete in labor products because of the massive capacities and incentives offered in new production centers. So for instance, Vietnam or Bangladesh, or even now Indonesia. I have recently worked on Indonesia and other Southeast Asian countries. Massive capacities they are creating in terms of special economic zones or other economic zones, and they are trying to offer them huge incentives to really attract a lot of such investment, which is more of labor intensive nature. Further, we find that youth needs to be, the aspirations are changing of the young population. They are more looking at better job prospects, and therefore they need to be prepared more in terms of skill attainment and more complex tasks. SEZ is something which I have been writing a lot, and I think that considering whatever is happening in the world, it is important that we must revamp this policy. We have to look at the large industrial parks, including logistic parks, mega food parks, multi-logistic parks, which I think Professor Nalin Bharti was talking about, coastal economic zones, which we had proposed, then national investment and manufacturing zones, which we had proposed. So several policies have come, but what is happening to them, this needs to be seen. What is the kind of constraint that they are facing, and we have to address them using a kind of holistic approach. So any push to the low skill labor intensive industries in the current context may not be very effective. So we must identify the employment potential in the industries where dynamic advantages are emerging. Let me just briefly give you one example, which is a recent, which I observed in my recent visit to a place called City City. City City is a special economic zone, and I spent there 1.5 months recently. And what I found, I spoke with people which is in this area, which is essentially a rural area. And what I find that people are not available to work in the food industries, or textile industry. So there is a fabric park which came up, which was totally failed. And then we had this City City SEZ, where we have some value added, which are, most of the industries are in electronics or electrical engineering. There we find that there is a lot of rush for people to come. So, and that actually has triggered a kind of incentive also to acquire knowledge. So these are the dynamics, field-based dynamics, which suggest that this is a time now to move to upgraded products. And any kind of SEPA or any free trade agreement, I think that we can be successful only if we strengthen our own competitiveness. This is a strong view. Actually, I have written about that even in my one of the earlier. So finally, and most importantly, we need to place international competitiveness at the center of this rhetoric of self-reliance. This is something which is very important to achieve competitiveness. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, madam, for very intensive and very much we can say, in-depth analysis of the India's export, diversification of export, how majority of our products are still, especially the traditional products which was exported in past, is still continuing. That also shows our competitiveness, even though many countries are coming up as a competitor. The data which you have presented about the continuing products, which is still competitive, that is still one of the very important point which I have taken from your lecture. But at the same time, a very small entry of the new products, that also shows a new India entering in the global market. But that has to be strengthened day by day. And that's why various schemes which you have named in the last part of your lecture, that has to be very seriously taught at the state level. So when I was the student of bachelor, and that was the time India started economic reform. And when India started economic reforms, there were three other very important points, that is Mandal, Kamandal, and Bhumandal. So this Mandal is the caste politics, the Bhumandal is the religious politics, and the Bhumandal is the globalization. So today also, when UP election is on, various other states are fighting their elections. The growth dimension and the development dimension has to be on the top for India, because India has the potential to prove it. So before inviting Professor Shahid Ahmed, these are my points. But Professor Shahid Ahmed is extensively involved in international trade, especially looking India's export and trade policy in past. So I would like to invite now Professor Ahmed for his remark.
Thank you, Nalin, and the chair, Professor Mukul Asser. And let me congratulate Professor Aradhana Agarwal for excellent presentation and for her detailed research, insights given about growth, diversification issues related to India's export. The one thing from the lecture, in my opinion, emerges that the important aspect, if India want to grow, the internal strength is necessary. The economy need to be develop its internal strength, whether it is global competitiveness or internal issues. The internal strength is necessary component for any global success. That is the basically emerging policy implication from Professor Agarwal's lecture. As a discussion, I have only few points and few additions, because already Professor Agarwal has indicated all aspects related to growth and diversification. Now, as far as growth is concerned, the one thing, the positive aspect of India's economy since 1991, there is one positive aspect in economic policy space, and as an economist, that's working quite well. And that is when we teach in macroeconomics expectation theory, the rational expectation hypothesis in macroeconomics. The one aspect about last 30 years, irrespective of regime change, whether the UPA or NDA, India's path policy space is more or less in macro sense is common. There is no, particularly in global space, which you call export-oriented growth strategies, or related to FDI, or related to other strategies dealing with India's integration with global economy. There is a broad consensus in all political parties, and those who are participating with India's economy, whether it is a global exporter or the firms, or they have a quite common expectation that irrespective of internal politics in India, the policy space will be quite invariant, and it will continue. And that has upgraded India's position. And there is a positive impact of this particular aspect and in this way. Coming to in that way, already Professor Agarwal indicated what has happened as far as growth is concerned, export growth in that way. But when we see what the chair of this presentation, Professor Asar, is indicating for India's, the Indonesia, Vietnam, and Korea, basically India mostly when looks from figures, particularly in China's perspective, given its size, and India still stand quite. I just look at the figures, not looking the figures of 2019, 20, and 2021. I treat them as a structural break or temporary shock because of this pandemic situation. But if you see the figures, India's around, as far as merchandise trade, it is around 325 billion, while China's is more than 2,300 something. The 8 times difference is still India stands. While we, in that way, we have to do a lot, both as far as diversification is concerned or as far as market penetration is concerned. And for that way, Professor Agarwal indicated that the moment India's export is not growing in the areas where RCA is competitive. But the theory also suggests that that RCA works in a distortionary, non-distortionary trade regime. And mostly what we have observed that the structure of distortions are changing. Earlier in 1930s, when US led this whole distortionary process by Tariff Act of 1930s, now there are NTBs. We have observing that variety of distortions are existing. Where you are feeling competitive, there are variety of distortions are coming either in anti-dumping forms or some health issues, some others. And when the multilateral regime is not working effectively, particularly the WTO, there is no success story in last, after Uruguay round, there is no big achievements of WTO multilateral framework. Rather, there is a lot of issues of multilateral, plurilateral nature discussion is taking place and deviating. Even nobody now talking about the Doha mandate, and even nobody knows it has failed, though it has failed, but nobody is talking about, even the Director General of WTO never talks about it, that what happened to the desire of the developing countries, all Indonesia, Vietnam, India, Bangladesh, what happened to all these people? Even the multilateral forum, no discussion. And distortionary regime are some way or in other way there. Professor Agarwal has already indicated one line. There is no, if you say that there are FTA or some type of free trade agreement, it doesn't a guarantee of success, and you will be always in many of my own research, you will find, which based on general equilibrium framework, there is always a losers and gainers. So not necessarily if you just enter in an agreement, it will give you a success. Most of the time, you may be a loser, and particularly within the economy, there are a significant segment which is the loser side of the story. Now, if you see this, my own, which is accepted paper, but the data from that, if I say this simple statistics from India to China, in 2018, there is one data, raw data, which is published by UNCTAD, that tells us that the raw material, India's raw material export consists around 7.48% in 2018. And if you see the intermediate products, India export around 32%, and the consumer goods around 45%, and capital goods around 14%. And when you compare with this figure with China, the raw material in China export only just 1.66%. And this intermediate goods around 16%, and consumer goods around 35%, and capital goods around 46%. So this tells us where we, this as far as the big economy is concerned, and which is developing economy nearby, still we are the lower end as far as either this is the stage of processing data. This is state of processing data, which tells us that we are somewhere at the lower end of the cycle as far as India. And while China is now exporting, if you just add 35 plus 45 works out to be around 80%. 80% export of China falls in the category of either the consumer goods or the capital goods, while India is not the lower end of that category, either the raw material, which is around 8%, and then the intermediate goods are some figure. And if there was the Professor Agarwal is indicated that she has evaluated whole from technology perspective, which is a law classification. If you see this, the big economies comparison like China, India, India's export fall in the category of the low skilled and medium skilled category, while the China's major significant portion of export fall in the category of medium to the high skilled category of export. So there is a lot of potential of export diversification as far as India is concerned. Yes, rightly indicated that India's number of product has increased from 3,600 to 4,000 something. The number of export over a period of time, that the number has increased, but lot of potential exists for India for diversification component. And when we see the product diversification, destination participation, yes, there is a more diversification has taken place. We are now having a look east or East Asia policy. And also we have an effort to penetrate African market. So India has a more diversification, and if you see, there is a reduction from the share of developed countries as far as India's export is concerned. So we are more diversification as far as destination is concerned, export destinations. But still there is a lot to attain it, to diversify, because if there is any shock to US economy or to European economies, we are still affected. And because still we are, say, almost 40% of our export is destined to the developed country nation. So we need to participate more to the East Asia neighbors, where we have already an agreement with India, ASEAN, and we have not joined RCEP, but there is a lot potential. Africa, we have not done much. There is need to do a lot of participation in African economies. What the China has done, we are lagging behind. But for at the end, I will say that we should not learn from these 2021. We should not that India has succeeded a lot as far as export is concerned, because this is global shock. And when the say the US is badly affected, Europe is badly affected, India is less badly affected, obviously your share will increase, particularly pharma. This is a temporary structural shock. And we have to just come to the normal situation, and then we should make a judgment that India has done a wonderful job in as far as export is concerned. And that's the reason when I am doing any research, I am restricting myself to 2018 or 2019, not looking much figures for this structural break, because for trade economists later on we have to evaluate this time series data, how to capture this health issues, because this is giving not right results in my opinion. But I think as an economist we need to talk about more for multilateral trade regime, because right now the developed countries are in a deviating path, and not right now. If you see the US strategies after Obama and later on Trump and Biden, nobody is interested to come to the table and discuss this forum, because that is curtailing their power and freedom to discuss. But there is no option for developing countries except multilateralism. FTA, yes, if we can do on the mutually beneficial terms with the India EU or India UK or India US, good enough. We should do it, provided we agreed on mutual terms of trade, mutual terms of benefit. That's good enough. But multilateralisms need to be emphasized. And I congratulate also the Arjun for organizing this event. And I stop it here.
Yeah, thank you very much, Professor Ahmed. Now we have few questions. So let me read out some of the questions. So one of the question is for Professor Agarwal about, is the US playing around with India in raising expectations towards an FTA? First a BIT, then mini trade deal. None of these are in the offering. Can you explain the policy dilemma in this? Should I read other questions also?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, the second question is again about both the papers are comprehensive and informative. Why there seems less intra-regional trade among SAARC, despite the presence of SAPTA and other policy initiatives? What about facilitation on trade front to Nepal and other small economies of South Asia? So next part of this question is about Nepal could become export base for India. Win-win situation could occur then, as India is one of the premier investors country after China in Nepal. So the first question was about FTA, and the second question was on the intra-SAARC trade.
Yeah, thank you very much for these questions. First of all, so let me take the first question first. Now, so far as the US is concerned, I think US has some sort of uncertainty in its policy. You know that the last regime of Trump, he had a sort of idea about, he was not really interested into all these trade and these trade agreements. He was more focused on the domestic economy. So his focus was on how to promote manufacturing within the economy, and his attention to the rest of the world was not really there. And we know that how he pulled out of these various negotiation, TTIP and all those. So there is still, they have to still come to the track. First of all, this is very important to understand. Now, at the same time, their policy regarding India, they look at India as a big market. Now, this must be understood that India is seen as a big market, and any deal that they want to do is to promote their exports and FDI within India. So what is happening at the moment is that there is a sort of tussle, and they are not very sure whether India is going to give them give them the kind of the space for that. So there is a dilly-dallying that is happening in this in these FTA. In fact, if you look at even US and EU, they have been negotiating for a long time, and they haven't yet reached any conclusion. So I think that with growing nationalism that has been taking place after this crisis, there is a sort of backtracking so far as international agreements are concerned. Bigger countries are looking for more space to be given, whereas smaller countries, they are not really in a mood to give that kind of space. So of course, this has affected these deals, and they are not really coming to any conclusion. So we have started with the EU again. We have started with now we are talking about the UK. We are already carrying out with the US, but these negotiations don't happen quickly because of the kind of domestic politics that is also becoming very important. So actually, I agree here with Professor Shahid Ahmed that we should strengthen the WTO multilateralism. That is more important at the moment. But of course, the countries are looking, I mean, the process of these negotiations have been going on. Now, so far as SAFTA is concerned, now actually I'm working on South Asia currently, and I tell you that SAFTA has not been very successful. I'm afraid to say that. But the trade share has not really grown beyond 4.5 to 5%. So intra-regional trade within SAFTA, that hasn't really grown much. So this is what we must understand. Now this is something which is about political economy. So there is a lot of political economy that is playing its part, and again, I think that it is very important to have trust, when you are talking about intra-regional agreements. So somewhere, I think that countries are now looking to other countries. I mean, these South Asian countries, they are looking to other groupings. For instance, we find that some countries are looking to CAREC, some countries are looking to this, it's BIMSTEC, I think. So these are different groupings that we are looking. So
I can add something to SAFTA issue. Should I add something?
Yeah, no, of course I will give you, because but I don't want to make a huge comments on SAFTA actually, because me, I feel that SAFTA is something that needs to be made effective. We need to understand how we have that common history and how we can have the common geography and how we can be benefited through trade linkages. But at the moment, things are not really moving the way that they should. Nepal, very nice question. Actually, Nepal could be the base for India's exports. Nepal could also be it both can be benefited through these interlinkages. But somehow, again, the political uncertainty, the question of domestic politics, all these again and again come up, and things don't really happen. So any international relationship cannot be looked upon without looking at the domestic dynamics that have been taking place. And sometimes these dynamics don't really allow these international relations to grow. And I think that is the main reason why SAFTA is not happening, or why at the moment many of these trade negotiations are just going on, and we are not really coming to any conclusion. Thank you. Yeah, Shahid can add something, whatever.
Yeah, actually, I just want to add something regarding the second question about Nepal. Actually, what Professor Agarwal is saying is absolutely right, that there is no success story of SAFTA. But I look at SAFTA in two parts. You see, when you see the SAFTA's economies, there are two economies, which is India and Pakistan. India accounts around 80% and Pakistan accounts around 10% of the size of the economy. Then the 90% of these two economy, and there is a whole politics about the issues. So when you look at the figures of SAFTA region, that you will not find much success story. But there is other part of the SAFTA region, like India, Sri Lanka, India, Bangladesh. There is a lot of success story about this, that we have in the region, particularly India, Bangladesh. There is a good trade flows, and there is success story of India, Bangladesh also within the region, and also India, Sri Lanka, whether you can attribute for India, Sri Lanka FTA, or you can attribute to SAFTA, because India, Sri Lanka, obviously it is better deal than the India SAFTA. But there is also a success story of India, Sri Lanka in the region. India, Nepal, that's the right, that there is a more potential yet to be untapped. And the economic logic is there, but ultimately there is a governance which is political always, so need to be looked upon that perspective. So there is a subsection of the SAFTA region which is benefited from SAFTA, and more the India, Sri Lanka, and India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and Pakistan also. So there is subsections within the region which is benefited, but as a whole, because of the size of these two economies and the political economy of India and Pakistan, that's not working, and it is affected whole region. And the regarding trade facilitation, this is the only area which is need to be worked, because the issues related to the trade facilitation and trade hurdles, that is the area need to be looked in the SAFTA region. The tariffs is not in a globally and also in the region is not a big issue, except India and Pakistan. That's my addition only.
So can we also have 2 minutes quick way forward from each of the speaker, starting from Professor Asar?
Thank you, Nalin. Just some very quick points. Professor Agarwal had mentioned about Bangladesh. I have a different perspective from Professor Ahmad that 2021 data is distorted or has a lot of noise and so on. Works both ways. The growth rates are down too. And I think there is a structural change which we need to take into account, including the efforts of many countries now to create new supply chains and logistics chain that are not so overly dependent on China. And many of the agreements, like the Quad, has got, for example, health, the vaccine element, where India will be the main manufacturing base, which will be distributed with Japan and others. So there are a lot of things. It's going to last because of global developments, because of India's efforts as well. But Bangladesh was mentioned. I'll just give you the figure. In 2021, merchandise trade of Bangladesh was $39 billion. India was 400. We don't have service data, but India was, as I said, 632, a huge difference. But you are very right that Bangladesh has taken opportunities in certain key commodities, products, which India would do well to learn from. Second, the exports to GDP graph. Export to GDP is only with respect to merchandise. If we were to start adding services, because India's services in total trade is much higher than global services trade to total trade. Once you start doing that, it would be interesting to see how the rankings are. I don't know what they will be because I have not done work on that. Labor intensity, you, Professor Agarwal, were somewhat you gave less emphasis on labor reforms. I think labor reforms are very important. Would you want to go to Kerala and set up anything, or West Bengal, or nowadays Punjab? labor reforms are essential, and we need, and related to labor reforms are the logistics costs. One of the ways where we lost competitiveness is our logistic costs are around 13% as compared to the global average of 6 to 7%. That's what the Blue Economy, Bharatmala, Yojana, others are trying to address, is to explicitly reduce our logistics cost. And that needs to be included in that. The other is the connectivity, the logistic, the connectivity was not there. So Bharatmala is going to address that. Sagarmala is addressing that. And these are structural changes which are going to last. This is not, 21 is not just one, 1 year thing as well alone. There is also another issue that is worth researching further. I learned a lot from Professor Agarwal's very meticulously researched paper. One of the things that we need to look at is what are the districts from which India's exports are being made and what. So recently PIB had a table that they published which shows that very few districts account for a very large proportion of the exports. So one of the ways, strategies to expand India's diversification is to try to get more and more geographical area. This is where the Northeast comes in. This is where one district, one product program in UP and other states that are following it. So this is why this structural change is going to be a major one that will have an impact over the medium term. And we shouldn't dismiss 2021 figures just like that. It's not pharma alone. It's, India is now, I think, around 20th in defense exports in the world. And Philippines is just concluding contract to buy BrahMos missile from India. So India's exports of defense, which we always shied away and which we always is going to go. So we will get diversification. It will take a few years and it would be very interesting 3 to 5 years from now. How do your numbers look? Thank you again for the opportunity. But I learned a lot. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Asad. Now, Professor Sahid and then Professor Agrawal.
I agree with Professor Mukul that there is a lot of potential and opportunities. Some structural changes are taking place. Hope this works out. The Bharatmala and connectivity issues like there. It depends of the successful implementation of these programs. Like this, there is a lot of potential both in the diversification front and the destination as well as in the product specification. But it's still there is need to do a lot on internal front of the economy. For globally, you can succeed only when you are a successful economy at your domestic level. You have to like to the point Professor Mukul indicated that district-wise outcome of growth, regional for the origin of the export from India. But if you there's only few states in India where this basically the whole industrial segment, because where India's export originates from Chapter 71. the maximum share around more than 21%, and then the chapter 71, and then another chapter, if I remember, just see the chapter 27 and 20, chapter 71, which accounts 15 and 12%, and both the sectors are HS. I'm referring to two-digit HS chapter 27 and 71. Both belongs to the industrial component now. And the industry's location in India, you see where the Northeast stand, where the Bihar stand, where Odisha stand, and the region. Odisha comes because of the minerals and some oil, some component, but there is a lot to do as far as domestic economy is concerned. To the state level reforms is needed, and more structural reforms, not only this the particularly media type of reforms, which is generally on for public consumption, but on the reforms at the ground, how to invite the people, what is the concentration of FDI in few regions and few states. Those who are investing in India, where they are investing, go NCR region, come to the Gurgaon, go Noida, then the Pune and Mumbai and Maharashtra, the few regions only you may be. So there is a lot to do within the region itself to succeed successfully on to become a global player in as far as your export and import regime is concerned. And we need also the import for successful exporter. So that protectionist tendencies need to be curtailed also within the region, within the nation also. We should not follow the old policies that there should be a restriction on the imports and then export. No, we need a raw material, we need a technology, we need we have to liberalize the region, but domestic reforms. And at the ground, it may be state level reforms and then district level, how to make that attractive. So I am fully agree with Professor Mukul from that point of view. And internal strength is the key for the success in global economy. And that yet to be achieved, and there is a lot of potential to do this. That's the point I want to make.
Thank you, Professor Ahmed. And now, Professor Agrawal.
Yes, first of all, thank you very much for the questions and for the comments. And I think that that has enriched and me, and I think that will be now incorporated in the paper, some of the points that have been made in this presentation. Just one or two points I would like to address here. One is the point of labor reform, which Professor Escher raised. Actually, labor reform is said to be the key factor in India. And if you look at Arvind Panagria's book and writings, he has emphasized this as the single most important factor for growth. Somehow, I think that this is not really that important as compared with many other factors that need to be promoted. For instance, good infrastructure, logistics, good governance. Yes, you see, if there is a enterprise survey conducted by the World Bank, which shows that the most important bottleneck in India for growth. This is what the firms say. Perhaps we don't really want to discuss corruption as a kind of factor which has penetrated in every layer of our society. So that there was another survey recently, which also shows that in India, corruption was said to be the most important bottleneck. So I think this we must keep in mind that, and according to my interviews with firms, 20% of cost is accounted for by corruption. They say that at every stage they have to give money. So one must understand that there are more important issues that are actually ailing this economy, and we need to really address them and just not focus only on labor reform. So this is what my point is. So that may not be the kind of the most important factor or the key factor to promote labor intensive production. That's what But this point of including services into into exports and then see the GDP growth rate, I think that's a very interesting point, and that I shall see whether I can do that. Now, district-wise, again, according to, I mean, if you look at the current scenario, in this current scenario, the growth has become very region-specific. You see, it is a globalization in which regions have become more important, because it is the competitive advantage of the regions that decide whether you can really be competitive in the world market or not. And this is why, you know, we have to promote, we have to identify the regions which have the potential, because not every region can be developed. You see, we cannot really develop regions for exporting. This is something which has been the experience also, which is shown that we can give so much of incentives to a backward region, but then we don't find that kind of growth in those regions. So we need to growth, because competitive advantage of the region matters a lot. So you have to create those competitive advantages in those regions which have potential, and then you can actually promote much of the growth. And this is where actually I think that industrial clusters or industrial estates or special economic zones, may not be special economic zones. I don't believe that special economic zones should be only for exports. I strongly write against that they should be now, I really feel that they should be now open with incentives only to export, with incentives to only certain productive activities, high-tech productive activities, not to all of them. So this is what actually they should have, that kind of change in the mindset when it comes to special economic zones. But that can go some way, because there we find that in India, some of these special economic zones, like in Siri City, I just want to bring that in just to tell you that I had been to this area, which was totally area. There was no economic activity in that area except mango growing and paddy growing, and paddy was subsistence economy. And today if you go there, you find that it is a totally changed place. It is totally commercialized, and there is earlier the companies were finding a lot of people unemployed for every position. Now they don't have people to get employed. So I think we should learn from such places, such examples in India, because there are examples in India, and see how we can do that. So, and there are competitive advantage of this in the sense that it is very close to Chennai, and it has the connectivity, it has the ports, it has the airports. So in the proximity. So I think those kinds of competitiveness advantages may be identified and we can promote them. But overall, we cannot really promote all the districts or all these places or all the states with the kind of investment that we have. So we need to be more selective. So that's what my idea is. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Professor Agarwal. Now I would like to again invite Professor Asar for the concluding remarks as the chair of this session.
Thank you, Professor Nalin. I think I already made my comments and given the main arguments that I wanted to convey. There are among the Professor Agarwal, Professor Shahid Ahmad, and myself, there are many points of agreement, some points of the differences in weightage to give to different factors and the importance of the internal reforms and our responsibility as researchers and intellectual community to support constructive reform going forward and not to politicize the reform process, to educate, to try to be ready to make arguments when the right type of reforms occur, whoever makes it, anywhere in the country. I think this is something that we can all take forward. As usual, this has been a very rich set of discussion from which everybody can learn a lot and think and reflect. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Asar. Before closing this webinar, three important points from the three speakers from this session is from Professor Agarwal's presentation, I got this point that India is still one of the competitive exporter, especially for those products in which India had competitiveness in past. At the same time, Professor Agarwal's presentation also throwing some light on how India is also coming up with some new products, and which was added by Professor Asar's point that yes, very soon India will start exporting some of the defense material also, and maybe exporter of many defense items. So the second point which Professor Asar made in relation to the today's discussion and presentation is that whatever new projects such as Bharatmala, Sagarmala, and Udan and other schemes India has launched in terms of connectivity, logistic connectivity, and new infrastructure which India needs to build up, this will result very soon in a very positive direction. So whatever we are having today, that is not the truth. What we will have in future, that is more dependent on what type of new infrastructures are created and how these infrastructures are linked together with some of the exporting states, as well as highlighted by Professor Asar, that the district level readiness should be also there, and some of the new districts must be added in our export destinations. So the entire discussion is not only bringing the product diversification, but it is also bringing the export destination diversification. And the point which Professor Syed Ahmad has brought as a part of this discussion is how multilateralism is being failed. Doha Declaration is on the backseat. There is no further improvement on the issue of public health. Even during the COVID-19, my recent paper, which was published on 6 January 2020, has highlighted in India Quarterly that how for patent waiver, the majority of the countries are playing with the card, and they are not deciding anything on the patent waiver. So very slow progress shows that WTO is not in the position to control one of the most important issue, that is the vaccine for all. And this cannot be solved without the patent waiver, and for which Article 31H and 31F of the TRIPS agreement provide us an opportunity to go for that, but it is not happening because there isn't any cooperation, and the cooperation theory is not working, especially in a very important period when we have to be very much cooperative. So bringing all three presentations and discussions in one line is that India had lots of opportunities. India is still having opportunities, but to go forward, we have to be very much targeted in coming days. Otherwise, we will be again missing the bus, like we have missed many buses in our past. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for this wonderful discussion. This has really been very, very enriching, and I really echo what Professor Asar has to say towards the end, that this has been a great learning experience for all of us. So I would like to propose the formal vote of thanks on behalf of the IMPRI Center for the Study of Finance and Economics to our speaker, Professor Aradhana Aparna Agarwal for a brilliant presentation of her research and the findings thereon. And I would like to thank Professor Shahid Ahmed for his points, for his inputs. The chair of the session, Professor Mukul Asher, for joining us and for adding to the richness of this deliberation. And most of all, thank you to Professor Nalin Bharti for leading and moderating this discussion and the discussion series. I would also like to thank everybody who has watched us here on Zoom and also on Facebook Live, and all those who would be watching us later on our YouTube channel and listening to the program on our different podcasts. I thank all of you for this and for your presence. I hope that you all will tune in to our future episodes of Talking Trade, the state of foreign trade. Wish you all a very good day and please stay safe. Thank you.